What's going on, Sooner Nation? Today we got to talk some recruiting because you might have seen an influx of information, whether it's people narrowing schools down and Oklahoma being in those top schools lists, and even guys starting to wrap up their commitments, announce dates. And I think it's something we have to talk about. And although we're not going to touch everybody in this video, there are two people that I specifically want to talk about. And the first one's going to be a 4-star defensive lineman. Before we do that, guys, go ahead, hit that like, hit the subscribe button, jump down in the comments below. Give me your thoughts on whether or not you think Oklahoma can land one or even both of these prospects, because we know this is not I'm not going to say like the most important recruiting class Oklahoma has had, but it's a pretty important one because it's your third recruiting class at Brent Venables. And I think there's a lot of expectations about, okay, we set the foundation in last year's class with recruiting defensive line and some of those other defensive guys. Are we going to be able to carry that momentum? And I think that question started with Landon Rink, because Landon Rink announced that he wants to wrap up his commitment, or at least announce and commit to a school on April 3rd. And I saw an interesting article on on Twitter from a source, I believe. Let me pull it up. TTJH Sports, and they did an interview with Landon Rink, and you guys know we've had him here on the podcast as well, so we have some sources. We've talked to a couple people, and I really like how they have phrased Landon Rink and his recruitment with the three schools in these three comments. Additionally, you've seen the predictions flow in favor of Texas A&M. So you might be asking yourself, well, what's going on? And I'm going to give you my thoughts here, but let's talk through this a second rationally before I give you where I think is going to end up going, or kind of my thinking here, my thought process. He says, I've had a great relationship with Coach Sean Spencer and Coach Tony and Jared and Eddie. I talk to them all the time. With Coach Elko, they're going to turn everything around. They have a great defense. They're going to turn everything around up there. And then you see him talk about Oklahoma. I have a great relationship with Coach Bates. I've had a great relationship with them for a long time. I feel like they develop great up there, and OU has a great culture. This is very similar to things that I have heard, right? That's why I really like the quotes here that they were able to put out. This is like very similar to what we've heard the entire cycle with Landon Rink. Going on to Ohio State and Larry Johnson. I have a great relationship with Larry Johnson. I was up there last weekend. I had a great time up there. Coach Johnson is one of the best defensive line coaches of all time, and they really know how to develop there. I know you guys might have your own thought process and opinion on Larry Johnson, but at the end of the day, kids really do believe in what he sells up there at Ohio State. Now, I want to talk through this a little bit because, like again, you've seen the predictions flow in. 100% of them on 247 are in favor of A&M. I don't think this race is over. And even if he commits to Texas A&M on April 3rd, I don't think it's over. Landon Rink is a priority prospect for Brent Venables and Todd Bates. That has been known. We've talked about that through this entire recruiting cycle. This dude has 40 total offers. I hate to tell you, A&M, just because they land this kid does not mean they're going to hold on to him throughout the entire cycle. Now, obviously, we've seen A&M pretty much hold strongly to their defensive line commits in the past. So there's not really a history to go off of and saying, well, yeah, like they're going to lose him as a commit because they've lost other guys before. I'm just saying, with the defensive line class, especially for what Oklahoma wants, not being as deep this cycle, they're still going to want to take bodies. And Landon Rink is a guy that they really believe in. And we know Oklahoma here for a while has been leading, right? You know, I talked about it with some guys in the Discord earlier, and I said, you know, when Bo Davis left Texas to go to LSU and A&M turned over their coaching staff, I really believed they had a lot of ground to make up. And you saw it. Texas, I mean, Bo Davis left, they fell out of grace. I mean, Texas really didn't pursue the kid. A&M, they kept on their pursuit. They prioritized him, you know, of course, being an in-state prospect, a guy that's really, would you say, is right in their backyard. And that's why I think you've seen A&M as of late really become a problem for Oklahoma, where they probably were initially going to be a problem if the coaching staff never turned over to begin with. The thing is, you always just questioned, would A&M be able to make up enough ground, right? And I get it. A lot of you guys are going to throw out the bag conversation. I I promise you guys, Oklahoma is putting out a competitive offer as well, right? Probably more than fair. So I don't really want to hear well, A&M is just buying a player. Well, I mean, come on. Every school is throwing out an NIL offer at some level, right? I guess it's who has made the best sales pitch. And again, like if Landon Rink commits to A&M, if he shows up to the party at the Palace, which is when his OV is currently scheduled with Oklahoma, I think if you're an Oklahoma fan, you maybe still feel good about that relationship that Todd Bates has. Like, this is one of those games where you have to slowly chip away at it. Like, when it comes to defensive and offensive linemen, I think something fans are going to have to understand is these recruitments are just going to be wild. They're going to be dramatic because those are going to be positions, along with quarterback, that people are just going to be willing to go all out for. And a guy of Landon Rink's talent or potential, right, once he gets on campus, this is a guy that's going to be highly coveted. He's been to A&M 4 or 5 times. He has an official visit scheduled on the 13th of June. He's been to Ohio State 2 or 3 times. Oklahoma, he's been there like 6 or something like that, like some insane amount. I'd ask Oklahoma fans, if you see the commit to come down, to not get too worried. You have Kamori Moore committed in this class. Cole Breiler is obviously coming up as well. Oklahoma has other targets that they're going to be looking at. Obviously, you might see late evals go out like they did in 2023 and 2022. So just slow down. Keep in mind, Bates is going to chip away at it. I don't think it's over. Now, there was another prospect that, hey, he announced his top 6. And this has been a position we've talked a lot about. You landed a former 5-star that was part of the 5-star in the 2025 class. When he reclassified, he wasn't a 5-star, but that's to each his own. So I'm going to say former 5-star in Devon Mitchell. You still kind of wonder, what's that tight end room going to look like? How much talent do we need, right? This was a cycle we were like, okay, are they going to take 2 elite guys? You've had Nate Roberts on the table, Lincoln Cure, DeShaun Brain. You've even had Chase Lofton out there, right? And Chase Lofton is a prospect that I think a lot of OU fans are going to undersell and undervalue because he doesn't have the ranking that some of these other top-tier guys have. DeShaun Brain, Oklahoma's included in the top 6 here. Elite list. Bama, Oregon, LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee. We know Bama with Kalen DeBoer, they're going to make a pretty compelling pitch because we've seen what Kalen DeBoer's offense has been in college football. Additionally, you see the crystal balls in favor of Oregon. And so you ask yourself, well, where does OU sit with DeShaun Brain? Like, where do they sit? And I'm going to tell you, Oregon's gotten 2 or 3 visits. Oklahoma, they've gotten like 3 or 4. Kansas State, they've gotten like 5. Currently, you don't see any official visits set up at K-State and Oklahoma. Right now, only OV is with Ole Miss, April 12th, and then Oregon on June 21st. June 21st is the party on the Palace date, so you're kind of like, man, I wish you would be on campus that day. I believe Oklahoma is going to get an official visit here. I don't see why they wouldn't, but you look at it and say, okay, Oregon, Ole Miss, like maybe you're like, okay, Oregon's the only one that seems to be the threat here that has the OV scheduled. Maybe Oregon is going to get this. And if they get this commitment, you're still looking at Nate Roberts, who is going to be on campus, guys, probably at least, I would say, 3 or 4 more times this year with an OV. Then you've got Chase Lofton, who I really like, and I believe if the staff really pushes forward, they can land. Lincoln Cure is the interesting one. I think that's I think that's going to be the one that we look at and say, how does the season go? Who really pushes for Lincoln Cure? How far does he want to travel from home, being from a small town, right? I believe OU can get there. I want to see Lincoln Cure get back on campus one more time before I really talk about him as a serious contender. But I really like Nate Roberts and Chase Lofton. You get that pairing, and don't get me wrong, I'll take DeShaun Brain. You get that pairing, I think you got an excellent tight end room here in the 2025 cycle. So I don't think there's any room to fear for Oklahoma fans. If you see the top 6, Oregon in there currently has an official visit, but Oklahoma doesn't have one, I would not worry at this exact moment. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Joe John Finley, he got a stud last cycle. We need to see what this tight end room is going to look like because you've heard out of the spring reports that some of these guys like Josh Faneuil or Caden Helms, oh, shoot, if you guys saw the pictures of Caden Helms, like that's exciting in and of itself. You've seen the videos of Devon Mitchell, like we're all excited about those guys. Bauer Sharp. So we need to see what this tight end room currently is going to look like before we really get ahead of ourselves and like, okay, like, do we need to land DeShaun Brain? Like, what's that recruitment going to be like? So it's kind of what I want to talk about. I want to talk about Landon Rink because that's the big one. It's the one that we've really tried to hit on the most. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not ready to flip from OU to A&M just yet. I think I'm going to wait till about Friday or Saturday to really make that decision. I want to sleep on it, maybe talk to a couple more people and get a really good sense for, is this commitment going to stick with A&M if he ends up committing, or does he even end up committing to A&M from the jump? Because I mean, shoot, leading up to that point, I think a lot can change, and I think Bates is going to continue to press pretty hard. So if you guys have not already, go ahead and hit that like, hit the subscribe button, make sure you're joining the discussion, jumping down in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think, and if Oklahoma can land either one of these two prospects. Hey, you know what? YouTube wants you guys to watch one of the two videos below, so make sure you guys are tuning in there as well.